Well, can I just say welcome to the Rangiora RSA. There is line dancing commencing at 1 o'clock and some of you look like you got potential, so we'll try and wrap this up before that, otherwise you're more than welcome to join. Listen, can I just say firstly, thanks for coming. Certainly ensuring people are feeling safe in their homes, on the streets and in their workplaces, I think is one of the most fundamental responsibilities of any government. But over the last 6 years, if we're really honest about it, this Labour government has not lived up to delivering on that core responsibility. Violent crime is up over 33%. Serious assaults have more than doubled. We've seen a 70% growth in gang membership, so there are now 9 gang members for every 10 police officers, and we've witnessed 2 ram raids a day in New Zealand over the last year. A national-led government is going to take that core responsibility incredibly seriously. Today I'm here with Paul Goldsmith, our Justice spokesperson. I'm also here with Mark Mitchell, our Police spokesperson. The great MP and very good-looking bald man, the MP for Waimakariri, Matt Ducey, is here as well. And I just want to acknowledge our Christchurch-based National Party candidates, Vanessa Wienick, Tracy Summerfield and Dale Stevens, that are here as well. But today what we're doing is releasing our Law and Order manifesto, and that is certainly a compilation of actions that we've been talking about now for over a year and a half to restore law and order and to restore personal responsibility in New Zealand. And if we're honest, we do so against a backdrop of rising crime and a government whose approach, frankly, hasn't worked over the last 6 years. National is seeing that ourselves, even as we're out there campaigning. You'll be aware that we've had more incidences of intimidation against National candidates and volunteers are being reported. Just yesterday, for example, our candidate in Manurewa, Shiva Kalare, was again threatened by a gang member who told him to tell me that National could not take power away from gangs, and if we did, police wouldn't be safe. And there are other examples of gang members trying intimidating behaviour and organising because they know they're going to have a softer run under Labour. We've had a candidate who had to move out of their house due to a gang threat. We've had a death threat made to a volunteer in Auckland, and we've had several volunteers abused and followed by gang members in Hawke's Bay. Well, I'm here to tell you we will not be intimidated, and campaigning is an essential part of our democracy here in New Zealand, and I absolutely condemn threatening behaviour against National Party candidates and against any candidates from any political party. Make no mistake, gangs are not nice. Gangs wreak havoc and are responsible for enormous social and community harm. Gangs are allowed under this government to take over whole towns. They're able to take out motorways, they're able to beat people up in broad daylight and intimidate and threaten members of the public. So we are going to tackle gangs and restore law and order to make our communities safer. And it's no wonder then that gangs are actually organising their followers to vote for Labour because they know that under a government I lead, the easy ride ends. Just incredibly, 60% more gang members are now on home detention and are responsible for 1/3 of all the breaches that are taking place. Dairy owners and other small businesses and retailers, some of whom we've met this morning, are already struggling with a weak economy and a prolonged cost of living crisis. And they're also having to deal with an unprecedented barrage of ram raids and smash and grabs and theft and crime. And retail crime has now been impacted to an incredible level, where 92% of retailers say they've been impacted by crime, and it's costing the country $2.6 billion. And then even when criminals are arrested and charged, they're too often being slapped with a wet bus ticket by the courts and then sent back straight into the community. And that is just not the New Zealand that any of us grew up in, and nor is it the New Zealand that any of us frankly should accept. I think that as a community we get to choose something different, and I think that New Zealand can and should be the safest country on earth. New Zealand needs to restore law and order, and we need to restore personal responsibility, and we need to end the culture of excuses in this country. A government I lead will back police with new tools to crack down on criminal gangs. We will deliver more police on the beat to fight inner city crime in particular. We will restrict sentencing discounts so that criminals face real consequences. We will create our serious young offender military academies for repeat serious young offenders and take the opportunities to put their lives on a much better pathway. And we will deliver faster justice for victims and also better rehabilitation for all offenders. So my messages to New Zealand in this very final week of the election campaign is that if you want change, party vote for National. Don't overthink it. If you want to restore law and order and personal responsibility, party vote National. And if you want New Zealand back on track with all the great potential that sits ahead of this great country of ours, then party vote National. The polls are open. Feel free to go and vote today. And with that, I'm happy to take any of your questions.
You spoke about the threats to candidates before, and a couple of weeks ago you said you'd be looking into whether the Nats would have the need to have any personal security, whether that be hired or extra police. Have we reached the threshold where you actually need to bring in a little bit more security for your candidates?
Over the last year, there have been instances and moments in time where we have privately arranged for extra security, and we've done that ourselves. In this case, we're making sure that all of our team are very well supported and have been given security and help when they need it, and we'll continue to do that. But again, yesterday when our candidate in Manurewa was threatened by gang members to basically say, stop the campaigning, we don't like your plans and ideas, and tell your boss actually if they bring this tougher regime on gangs, then we're going to push back on the police. Well, that's just sheer intimidation. And I think what's interesting is that the gangs are out there endorsing and signing up actually and enrolling to vote, and obviously wanting to endorse a Labour Party or a Greens Party because they want to avoid a national-led government. It's going to make their life difficult.
And you're a KPI guy.
Yes.
Have you got any sort of KPIs around gang membership numbers in your first year, 2 years, 3 years?
Well, what we've seen is over the last 6 years a 70% growth in gang members to 9,000 gang members across this country. That is a huge increase. And what we've got to do is, and Mark and Paul have done a great job of looking at what's working overseas. We've looked a lot at, particularly at Western Australia, which has actually tackled the gangs from the inside out, and we think a lot of the principles by which we've put in place here are actually very valuable here.
I'm asking about KPIs and numbers. Have you got a number that you
Well, we want to see crime reduce.
Yep,
That's
in
the way.
terms of numbers of gang, if you could just answer that specifically, have you got a number that you want to see gang members go down to?
No, we don't have a number by a particular date, but what we have is a very big focus to say this is an unattractive lifestyle as a young person. Do not go down the gang life. We are going to make it very difficult for gangs to survive in New Zealand.
So you want to reduce gang numbers, but you have no target?
I wouldn't worry about that. We are going to be very tough. I am worried about targets. We're going to reduce outcome. We're going to reduce crime for sure. Let me be really clear about that. But we are going to reduce gang members in New Zealand because we don't have a 70% growth in gangs in New Zealand. We don't actually say to young people that's an acceptable lifestyle and that's an acceptable pathway. So life will be tough for gangs. We will have banning of gang patches. We will have dispersal notices. We will have anti-consorting notices. We will have firearm prohibition orders. We will have gang membership as an aggravating factor in sentencing.
Can I just say to that question that the reality of it is in the last 6 years we've seen a massive increase in gang numbers. We've seen our towns being taken over by gangs. I'm coming to your point. What we've been very clear is with our policies is that we don't want the public to have gangs in their faces anymore wearing patches. They're not going to see them coming out taking over roads. You're not going to see them taking over towns. You're going to see a very different government that's going to be treating these gangs in a way that if they choose to impede on the lives of law-abiding citizens, we're going to be on the side of law-abiding citizens, not on the sides of gangs. And that hasn't happened for the last 6 years. So I anticipate that with an incoming national government, you'll start to see some of those things happen in the first 12 months where you're not going to see gang members out there wearing patches. They wear patches to scare and intimidate people.
I mean that wasn't the question around Jason's.
Well, your question was around targeted numbers. So our approach is going to be that we want to see a massive reduction in crime and gang-related crime and gang numbers. There's been a huge increase.
Sorry, I'll just come back to you a minute.
Why not set specific targets though? Because how will you know if you actually...
Oh, don't you worry. We will have specific targets in government. We're going to have better. Well, we're going to have better public service targets across all of our government departments. And once we're in government, some of them we've actually worked up quietly in the background. We want to be able to engage with the actual ministries and the agencies and the police in this case, and we will do that from government. And so that's why we'll have better public service targets and clarity around crime and health and education and all the services. Instead, what this government has had a single target, a 30% reduction in the prison population.
You would set a specific target of how many gang members you want to...
We will set specific targets around the reduction of crime and the components of crime. And part of that, a feeder into that, is gangs and the drive around illegal guns and violent activity. But we will be setting really clear targets around crime.
Can we move on to a different topic? So is it irresponsible for your campaign to be threatening a second election?
What we're saying is there's a lot of uncertainty with MMP in general. Every MMP election is incredibly close. My position has been very clear. I've laid it up that I want to maximise the National Party vote. I want to then work in a strong, stable coalition with the ACT Party, and if needed, as a last resort, I'll pick up the phone to New Zealand First. But what is going to stop is that New Zealanders want change. This government has not delivered for them.
The question is, though, is it irresponsible to be dragging up a second election on the campaign?
What is irresponsible is 3 more years of Labour, Te Pāti Māori and the Greens not delivering for New Zealanders.
Sorry, if you could just
and that's
get
what
back
I'm
to
saying.
the question.
The question is it irresponsible to threaten a second election?
We're just highlighting there's lots of uncertainty in an MMP environment. The MMP elections are incredibly close. I've laid up very clearly our decision around the parties that we want to work with and can work with. We will make that work based on what the New Zealand public deliver us on Saturday night. But importantly, we are going to make sure that we actually deliver for New Zealanders. Because out there right now...
Why are you panicking so much?
Sorry?
Why are you panicking?
Oh, we're not panicking at all. We are very focused on making sure New Zealanders understand the gravity of the situation, that Chris Hipkins and Grant Robertson have run this economy into the ground. They're not talking about law and order today. I bet you that when you stand up and do Chris Hipkins' media stand up today, what's he going to talk about? He's going to talk about me, and I think I appreciate the fan club. I appreciate all of that. It's lovely of him. He's going to talk about the National Party. He's not talking about ideas to reduce law and order. He's not talking about his ideas to get our economy growing. He's not talking about ideas to fix our education system or our failing healthcare system. We've been talking about common sense. We've had common sense ideas. That's what we're talking about today. It's law and order.
But you're bluffing. You're bluffing. You're not going to take New Zealand back to a second election. It's just not going to happen. You're bluffing, aren't you?
I think it's pretty unlikely there'll be a second election. But I think the reality is there's a whole bunch of uncertainty and a whole bunch of uncertain outcomes that come with MMP elections. And so our message has been consistent. Party vote national. If you want to change this government, a guaranteed change, party vote
deliberately
national.
trying to scare the New Zealand public to not vote Winston. Is that what you're doing?
We're saying it very clearly to New Zealand public. We want you to party vote national so we can change this government, so we can stop this 3 years of inaction and everything going backwards. And we do not want another 3 years of this country going backwards and not getting ahead.
Hundreds of thousands of people have already cast their vote.
Yep.
Do you think it is acceptable for the National Party to float the prospect of a second election despite hundreds of thousands of people?
All we're acknowledging is in an MMP environment, there is a huge amount of uncertainty. Every MMP election is incredibly close. And so our messaging over many weeks, our message over many weeks has been very simply, if you want a guaranteed change of government to get this country back on track, to actually get things done so we can actually fix law and order, we can grow our economy, we can deliver better health, better education, then you've got to party vote national. And that's all we're saying to New Zealanders is, look, hey, listen, if you want change, even if you've never voted for National before, we're going to be a government that's going to govern for all New Zealanders. Step up to the plate and deliver change. Sorry, I'll just come back to you. Yeah.
The biggest component of that is family violence. Why is there nothing in your Justice Manifesto?
Well, we are going to continue to work incredibly hard on family violence. Our family violence statistics here in New Zealand are shameful. It is something that we should be constantly ashamed of, and it's in all stratas of our society. So we're going to continue to work very hard on that.
Why is it not mentioned?
Well, we will continue to work very hard on it.
And just on family violence, the only work this government's really done on family violence is the work that we're doing. And they've picked that up, and that's work that we want to continue, but we want to roll that out and make sure that it's much more available, because they have completely failed on family violence, like you've highlighted.
And you also want to increase the prison population, I think, by 1,400?
No. I want to be really... No, I want to be really... No, yeah, but I want to be very clear about that. This is a government that's had a 30% target to reduce the prison population. Its only goal in justice and in the crime space. We already have our prison population down, I think, over 20% already. As a result, there is plenty of capacity in our physical jails and prisons to accommodate more prisoners. And we've also put aside a $718 million contingency in corrections, as you well know. So if we need to, we can accommodate that.
You accept it will increase. How will you ensure that inequity for Māori doesn't continue?
Well, what I'm going to ensure is that Māori who are disproportionately victims of crime are actually going to make sure that there's less crime in this country. I am sorry, but the excuses have to stop. Sure. I mean, you cannot have a 33% growth in violent crime, 100% growth in retail crime, 70% growth in gangs, and a ram raid twice a day in New Zealand. What we have is we're going to address crime. We're going to address crime. That is a problem. It is unfair. Go listen to the stories that I take you guys to each and every day to see those victims of crime. How do they feel? They've worked incredibly hard. Why are they in such a difficult place? Because the government's been soft on crime. We have to have rights and responsibilities in this country, and that's what we're going to do.
David Seymour is threatening to offer only confidence and not supply. What do you reckon he's playing at?
It's not going to happen. David Seymour and I have a good personal relationship. National and ACT have worked together incredibly well. We are very aligned about growing the economy, stronger law and order, better health and education. The means by which we deliver those policies and goals may be slightly different, but I can tell you we will work that through in a constructive way, and actually that is my strong preference, that a National ACT government would be in the best interests of New Zealand, that we will be able to govern for all New Zealanders and deliver outcomes and get things done for them.
Are you confident in your ability to actually form government?
Yes, absolutely.
And Wayne Brown wants to see the
Sorry.
Wayne Brown wants to see the Crown guarantee water infrastructure debt. Are you open to that?
Absolutely open to working with Wayne Brown and Auckland Council on how we manage their three waters assets. They have a rather unique situation, as we talked about with our policy announcement, Local Water Done Well, back in February. We acknowledged that. I actually spoke to the Mayor about it at that time as well, and I've spoken to him subsequently. Auckland is in a different situation, as you know, because of the scale of the operation and because they've got a singular entity called Water Care. Many other district councils around New Zealand are much smaller in scale, and they want to form council-controlled organisations that enables them to have balance sheet separation and access to long-term debt funding. We will sit down with the Mayor after the election and actually work out how we make sure we deliver sustainable financing for their three water assets.
Last week
He wants to know now whether the Crown will guarantee water infrastructure debt, because he says if you don't, water bills will double over 3 years.
I disagree. That's not what we want to see. We do not want to see water bills doubling, and we do not want to see an increase in rates, because we want to be able to give sustainable long-term financing solutions to Water Care and to Auckland Council. We will sit down and do that as part of what we call a city deal with Auckland. The Mayor has actually already proposed something called the Auckland manifesto. There's some good things in there. I'm sure there's things that we'll disagree with as well, but that's the way that we want to work in partnership with Auckland in particular. We want Auckland to be successful. It's a fantastic city, and we want it to go forward. Likewise, the Mayor himself will acknowledge that there is, wasteful spending, I'm sure, in council spending. I thought he and Maurice Williamson made a very strong case for asset recycling and doing what they can do with the rest of their budgets as well to support what they need to do to get the city moving.
Last week sorry, Glenn was ahead of me.
Sorry, Glenn. That's nice of you, Jason. That's so thoughtful of you. Sorry.
Leader's video saying you would work with him if you had to.
Yeah,
And in
last
hindsight,
resort.
Do you think that was a mistake?
No, I'm laying up very clearly to New Zealanders, party vote national, because I honestly think that is the best way to take the country forward. Secondly, what I've said very strongly is a strong preference to work with National and ACT, and as a last resort to avoid 3 years of a Labor government with Te Pāti Māori and the Greens and the Chaos Institutes. So that is our view. I want to make it really clear to New Zealanders, that is our position. It was our team idea, because we want to make sure our position is really clear and that everybody understands the choices, because at the end of the day, what New Zealanders want is change, and what New Zealanders do not want is 6 more years of going backwards under this government.
New Zealand First has risen in the polls. Now they're a real prospect of being in government.
Oh, I disagree. I think we've laid up very clearly the set of parties that we want to work with. We'll make that work and find a way through with that. And what I'd say to you is, if you want to avoid uncertainty, party vote national. That's been our message.
Did you consider including, at the start of the year you ruled out working with Te Pāti Māori. When you were working on that and made that call, did you consider also ruling out New Zealand First in that kind of announcement?
No, that's been our position, which has been to say party vote national. First preference would be to work with National and ACT, and if need be, I'll pick up the phone to New Zealand First and try and make that work too. Because to avoid...
Did you consider at the time to also say, at that time,
No.
we'll rule out working with New Zealand First? Wasn't a consideration?
No.
With the press leaders debate scrapped,
Yes.
so you haven't really been in front of the people of Christchurch and Canterbury as much.
Well, I'd say to you, I've been here a hell of a lot, and I've actually done a lot of back-on-track tours through here. So I have been in front of the people of Canterbury.
Because you didn't do that debate, what is the National Party offering specifically in terms of policy for the people of Christchurch and Canterbury, other than roads? What else have you got?
Well, what we're going to offer them is lower inflation, lower interest rates,
Specific.
a better run economy.
Specific.
Well, that's specific to the people of Canterbury. They care
And
about
the
those
people of
things. We're going to
Otago
offer
and
them,
Southland
and we're going to make
and
sure that we
Nelson
lower.
and Marlborough.
We're going to lower crime with a good law and order policy that gives
Anything. Just
restoring
one
law and
thing.
order. That's
one
exactly.
thing for Christchurch
Yeah,
and Canterbury, just one.
upgrades to Queenstown and Southland. If you want to talk South Island, talk about the
No, I wanna
upgrades to
go
the
back to my
Ashburton
original
Bridge.
question, and I wanna
Talk
say
about the
what
great work that we're going to do out
specifically
here
you've
at the
got Christchurch and
bypass up
Canterbury.
this
One
way.
thing.
Yep.
One thing.
Those things, bypass and better roads for Christchurch and Canterbury, because that's what they want, because that actually will drive economic productivity and economic growth in this great country and this great South Island. of
Last
ours.
week you were talking about Police Commissioner Andy Costa, and you said it would be a question for Police Minister, or apparent Police Minister, what's your name? Mark Mitchell. Sorry, mate.
Jason.
Sorry, mate.
It's Mark, Jason.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Can
You
I
were
ask,
doing so well. You were having a great media stand-up, and you just at the last minute.
Could I ask, if you were police minister, would you fire him, or essentially would you like to see somebody else do this?
Look, we're not going to answer those questions now. I mean, that would be irresponsible. And but the one thing that absolutely, the one thing that I have said is that we don't like the direction that this Labor Party and the Commissioner has taken with their version of policing by consent. We think that it's failed to focus on public safety. It's made our country a lot less safe. And I've been very clear that I've had 2 official meetings with him, and that I won't talk about the content of those meetings other than to say he's very clear that him and I are not aligned on that.
So his job is in the balance. If
Well,
you're police
and
minister.
I'm not commenting on that. It was irresponsible to do that. We have to wait. We have to await the outcome.
Are
What's
you
that?
saying it's irresponsible?
No,
he
we've
didn't.
been consistent. All we've said
Absolutely.
is we'll look at that on the other side.
That's right.
That'll be a responsibility for the
Yeah.
police minister to
We're not
make
going to comment on
that
it.
decision. But essentially what we're saying is we want policing back to basics. And that's consistent. We want police out on the beat. We want them highly visible in areas of crime, hotspots in crime. And we're going to look at that on the other side.
Can I just?
Right, last question, mate, and then we've got to go to line dancing.
So,
Yep.
Mike Miller from the Washington Post. Foreign policy has not featured much in this campaign. So, if you're Prime Minister, your relationship with China is going to be a defining one. In Canberra, Washington, the refrain is that China has changed. Do you think China has changed?
Well, again, on foreign policy, a Labor government, national government are very aligned. That is something that is quite bipartisan. We have a common approach to that. We have an independent foreign policy. We stand up for the values that are important to us here in New Zealand, national sovereignty, the rule of law. We raise our concerns with China in particular when we need to in private and publicly. We do so in a consistent manner. But we also have commercial relationships with China, and we'll continue to
You
develop
mentioned
those too.
the possibility of joining AUKUS Pillar 2 at the debate.
No.
You said you were open to it. You said you were open to exploring
That's the same position as our government, which is that no one knows what AUKUS Pillar 2 actually is. It's very undefined, and both Nanaia Mahuta, our Foreign Minister, and our Defence Minister have said that they are open to understanding more and exploring what it is potentially about. But it's completely undefined. There is no commitment, just an intention to possibly explore what it could be about.
So currently, if you were offered a chance to join, you would reject that?
Yes, we would not be joining AUKUS because of the nuclear position of New Zealand. Pillar 2 is undefined. Nobody knows what the hell it actually means. And until we have clarity on that, under both governments, that's our combined position.
Just very,
Yep.
That you say you're facing a different China than, or you might be facing a different China than John Key faced.
I think so. Yes, I acknowledge that there is geopolitics across the world have changed, and particularly in our region, it's more contested, it's more competitive, and we need to navigate differently. But the principles and the values by which we do our foreign policy remain the same, and that's what guides us ultimately. Is we have an independent foreign policy. We believe in certain values, and we lead through our values, and that's what we'll continue to do. And we've done that successfully under successive governments of different political persuasions, and that's really important. All right, team, I'm just conscious. Last question, then we go to the line.
Walking into the RSA, I think we're talking to the Banks Peninsula candidate, and I think I may have misheard, but said something about a Labor candidate confessing that they had given up. Is that,
Well,
can you
our view is that we are
You
doing.
had a Labor candidate confess to leader of
I'm not getting into that. What I'm going to tell you is that it was a private conversation, but I'm telling you what we're saying. Is you should be really excited to know that in marginal seats that many of the Labor Party hold, there is huge appetite for a change. And whether it's in Banks Peninsula, whether it's in Ireland, whether it's been in Otaki, whether it's been in Mongakeke, wherever we see it, even Manurewa, we are seeing huge appetite for that. So what I just say to you is that I am very confident we're going to do very well in what we call the battleground seats and big Labour seats because people want change. And that's the central message of this election. New Zealanders are over it. They're over the lack of delivery. They're over the lack of poor performance. They're over the negativity and the personal attacks of Chris Hipkins because he hasn't got a track record to run on. He's got no new ideas to take the country forward with, so all he's doing is lashing out. But actually they want real ideas, common sense, practical policies. That's what they're getting, and that's why we're getting great support and great momentum across the country. Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Go join the line dancing, guys. Enjoy.